Shang, it is such an honor to talk to you. I'm so glad that we are connecting on this very important but obscure for some reason topic of extended family emergency funds. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jannese.
So why don't you start off with introducing yourself?
I'm Shang Saavedra. I am a blogger at Save My Sense, and I'm all about encouraging people to learn how to retire. And I reached the ability to work optional by the time that I was age 31.
Wow, amazing. And I think you definitely qualify for that hashtag goals. Uh, that's amazing. And so I wanted to talk to you today because I know you're really big on empowering women, especially on like taking control of their finances and really just feeling like it's not something that, we got to relegate to the men in our lives or um, the personal finance industry will have you, think that women and money just don't go together. And I love the fact that you are smashing that narrative and making it known that we can pursue millionairehood and all of the other things.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about family emergency funds. So for me as a Latina, the fact that I was going to have to prepare at some point to extend some sort of financial support to my family has been a very real thing that I've been confronting for a while. And I'm curious, as someone in the AAPI community, if that's something that is common to your community and if that's something you've personally experienced yourself.
Yeah. And it's actually two ways. I'm Asian American, I'm Chinese American, and my husband is Latino. So we actually have perspectives from both of those. I was brought up by my parents to understand that you never forsake your family. Like, family is at the center of our culture, family is everything. Now, I know many AAPI people are brought up with the expectation that they are their parents' retirement plan. That's the expectation, especially in Chinese culture, Korean culture, Japanese culture. But my parents actually said, don't worry about us, but we got to figure it out. But at the same time, my father set the example by sending money home to his parents, his extended family, whenever anyone needed help. And so I grew up at a very young age understanding that's just to be expected, and you do that for anybody in your family. And when I married my husband, he believed the same thing. He also believed that family is everything and you don't forsake your family. And we actually have a very substantial emergency fund, a 1-year emergency fund. And part of that is because there are emergencies happening, especially on my husband's side of the family, and we pitch in and help out when that happens.
Yeah, so it's great to have that dual perspective, right? And so I'm curious how you guys have set that up in your financial budget in order to be able to not only pursue your own personal goals, but also be able to help family.
Yeah. Thankfully, most of the emergencies that happened when we were saving like crazy to reach work optionality were not so life-threatening that it would wipe out the entire emergency fund. We'd always aimed for a 1 year's of expenses. Just saying, it's not like this is exactly what the emergency fund should look like, but it's just, hey, let's just aim for a really large amount to prepare for anything that could happen. And so whenever somebody's car broke down or they needed a bridge amount of money from one situation to another, we can draw from that emergency fund and replenish it pretty quickly. We never set a budget. We never set a cap on it because for us, it's just what you do with family. Like, we don't limit the love that you give to someone. Similarly, we didn't limit, say, the money that we were willing to give. But I also think that in our situation, our family members are very reasonable in what they need help for. It's not for frivolous expenses. It's for must-haves to support their livelihood, like a car. You need the car to go to work, and rent money, things like that.
Yeah. So for people who are trying to balance their own personal goals, maybe they're still working on getting out of debt, saving their own emergency funds, but they also have this desire to be able to help their families in some way. What is your thought on kind of the level of priority that should be assigned to each of these tasks? Are these things that can be worked on in parallel, or is it like, you should tackle one thing in front of the other?
Yeah, I think it's really up to you, but you have to recognize the pros and cons in different situations. I think what frustrates a lot of people who set it very early on as a part of their budget, like I'm going to give $200 a month to my mama, is that they see other people who don't have that expectation, and then that other person can save an extra $200 a month. It's like, wow, I feel so behind. When the reality is you're doing a really great thing by supporting your family. It's a blessing to be able to get to support your family. But my husband and I also had a loftier goal of saving up enough money to fully fund the retirement that my in-laws do not have. They have Social Security, but it's not enough to pay for life. That there's no way we could have done that, around the time that I was leading up to age 31. Now we can do that very well. So if you choose to start supporting your family towards the start of your career, it might not be a very significant amount of money. It might also slow down your own goals of becoming debt-free yourself from your student loans, things like that. But at the same time, your family realizes that benefit right away. They're like, oh my gosh, like my kid is helping me out. Like they're finally using their degree. Or if you did choose to do a little bit later in life, which is more the path that my husband and I walked, you may have to walk that line of, hey, in the beginning, it seems a little bit selfish that you're not giving as much, but it's with the promise that later on in life you could give a lot. I wouldn't say any of these is the right way. I think you and the family members have to agree on it. And at the end, it's your money. I still say at the end of the day, the only people who have true control over your money are your lenders. Otherwise, you control your money.
Yes, that's such a good point. Now, I'm curious, do you have a method that you prefer when it comes to holding an emergency fund, right? Some folks will say, just put it in a high yield savings account. Some people even use their Roth IRAs as an emergency fund. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we traditionally hold our emergency fund in multiple high yield savings accounts. We also do this thing called bank bonus hacking, where we move accounts and create new accounts to get some nice new bank bonuses. Really helpful with the low interest rates that are around these days. And that's what I would typically recommend to most people. On occasion, my husband and I have done some interesting ways of supporting our family through transfers of frequent flyer miles, loyalty points, and credit cards. Use that to buy gift cards for gas or for things like that. That's only because my husband and I have found a way to earn these points in a very efficient manner. So it's a more quote unquote efficient way to use our points than to say use a direct cash transfer. At the end of the day, for me, it's all money. Like I don't really differentiate my money in one account versus another. It's just whatever allows me to help meet the needs of others is what I'm willing to give.
I love that. I've never heard this concept of like hacking points for your family, and I think I'm gonna have to start doing that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I found kind of disappointing when I was even looking up this topic was that it was almost impossible to find the concept of like a family emergency fund or anything to that sort on Google, which tells me that the personal finance space really just isn't talking about this, even though this is a reality for a lot of communities of color. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on what the overall personal finance space can do to make these conversations not the exception, but more of the norm.
Yeah, I think traditional personal finance sayings have described giving money to your family as a nice to have. Like people typically put that under the wants, the nice to have bucket, and on a debt-free journey, what I'll see a lot of people say is like, oh, you should probably cut that out. But in a lot of the people that I've coached who are in these situations, when we talk about this, I'm like, tell me a little bit about this, $100, $200 a month you're sending to family. Where's that coming from? They're like, it's just, I gotta give to my mom. A lot of it's just like, this is expected. And so I put that under needs bucket. I don't see it as a want. And I would like for more personal finance creators to acknowledge that. And number two, I think what we can all acknowledge too is that if you are in such a situation where you're supporting multi-gen families who come from an immigrant background, that it's okay for your pace to look different. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong, and there's no shame in supporting family. I really think it's such an honor that it can do your family proud to be someone who can be in a financial position to support someone It is also a burden. I recognize that. But I think in the Asian culture, the ability to be a proud member of the family is a value that really gets emphasized.
This has been an amazing conversation, and I'm so grateful for your insight. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap things up?
I think you've covered it all, Jannese.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time.